Differences between male and female football. In May of 2019, the German ladies football team released an advert ahead of their World Cup campaign that jokingly highlighted the idea that women's football is like watching amateurs, only in slow motion. Since the Football Association lifted all bans on women's football in 1971, there has been much debate comparing men's and women's football. This video will look to highlight any key differences in how men and women approach the English game. It is no hidden secret that men's football attracts greater audiences compared to the female game. The 2019 Women's World Cup achieved a record high in viewing numbers for a female competition, reaching an audience of 1.12 billion people across the globe. However, the year prior to this, the same competition on the men's side accumulated 3 times this amount with an audience of 3.5 billion people during the 2018 World Cup held in France. This disparity can also be seen across attendances to matches. The Premier League averaging 40,000 attendances in the 2019-20 season, whereas the Women's Super League averaged a 3,500 attendance for the same season. So why is there such a vast difference between the viewing figures of different genders playing the same sport? Is the women's game slower, less physical, not as tactically astute? Let's look at the figures. Biologically, there are many differences between men and women. On average, men are taller, bigger, and faster. R. Vollen Pedersen carried out a study which identified that men can jump 21 centimeters higher on average and can also kick the ball 4 meters per second faster. Some may say that this leads to a slower paced game for the women, but the statistics, however, would demonstrate an adapted game style. A further study was carried out focusing on the key tactical differences between male and female football teams at the 2012 Olympic Games. The study found that 60% of women's shots would come from inside the box, whereas only 46% of men's would be from inside the box. This could be a demonstration of how the female game has adapted its style to suit the players and gain more success from working the ball closer to the goal rather than striking from distance. This, however, did not affect the shots on target ratio, with both genders having roughly a 50-50 ratio for on and off target shots. Other differences highlighted include the foul rate being much higher in the male games and the female matches having an increased error count each game in comparison to the men. A look at the World Cup statistics for the male and female teams in 2018 and 2019 respectively further uncovers some differences. The 2 World Cups saw 315 goals scored across 116 games between them. The men's side averaged 2.6 goals per game while the women's side averaged a higher 2.8 goals per game. The average age of the male players at the World Cup was 27.4 and was over a year older than the average age of female players, which was as young as 26.2. The women also averaged fewer yellow cards with as little as 2.3 per game, while the men had 3.4. So the women's game would appear to be showing a fairer, higher scoring competition, which should, in theory, generate a greater audience. A look at the winners of each competition may shed some more light. United States women's team were clear winners in their competition, scoring 26 goals and only conceding 3 across their 7 matches in the tournament. These 26 goals included an incredible 13-0 victory over Thailand. France were the winners of the men's tournament and scored far fewer with a total of 14 goals and 6 conceded throughout their 7-game campaign. One of the key identifiers for style of play is the amount of passes a team makes each match. England topped the most passes per game in both competitions, with the men averaging 484 per game and the women averaging 451 per game. The lowest passing teams for each tournament was Iran's men's side averaging 152 and Thailand's women's side averaging 164. These statistics would suggest a similar approach and style of play across both competitions, with the top and bottom teams having little between the number of passes per game. So the number of passes would appear to match up. However, the types of passes differ between the genders. The Women's World Cup had 61% of the passes played along the floor. This is significantly lower than the male competition, which saw 70.5% of the passes played along the ground. Where the Women's World Cup picks up a significantly higher percentage is in the low passes. These are aerial passes that remain below head height. This is the least frequent pass used in both competitions, being used for 15.2% of passes in the women's competition and only 8.2% for the men. This therefore leads to a fairly equal percentage of overhead passes within each competition. although the female competition had 2.5% higher overhead passes. But what percentage of these passes were accurate? The Men's World Cup teams averaged 78% pass success rate, with the Spanish side having the highest with an impressive 89% success rate. The women's competition displayed a lower average success rate with 72%, and Japan having the highest with 82%. Despite this, the two competition winners displayed significantly lower success rates. France's men's side sat in 14th for the best passing, with just 1% over the average, having 79%, and the US women's side achieved a 77% successful pass rate, putting them 8th overall for their competition. This could demonstrate that although there are differences between the teams as a whole, what is successful in each competition is similar between the genders, and requires a more risk-taking approach that was displayed by France and the USA to see them victorious. How teams approach goal kicks can be another key identifier for style of play. The male competition favoured the longer goal kick, with 78% of all goal kicks going over 40 yards. Russia, Serbia, and Panama opted to kick long 100% of the time throughout their tournament. The female competition placed a much greater emphasis on short goal kicks and playing out from the back, with only 66% of goal kicks going over 40 yards and no team opting for this long ball approach 100% of the time. So, overall, there are crucial differences and equally a lot of similarities between elite male and female football. However, it is clear that they both offer differing things. If you wanted to watch a powerful, aggressive, high passing match, then these statistics would suggest that the men's game is suitable. However, if you wanted to watch a high scoring, fairer fought, intricate passing match, then the women's game style would suit. Although both playing the same sport with the same rules, both the male and female players have developed differing solutions to playing the game that so many people love to watch, and maybe lessons can be learned from both.